A whispery voice of memory drifts into your mind as you see me plop down in front of my computer. 3 of my 5 windows. Yeah, I mean 5. I have a skylight. Won't roll down anymore, so that's a bit lame. But at least they got stuck rolled up. I stare blankly at the screen for a good 5 seconds as my cursor blinks in the search bar. Finally, you see me, with what seems great effort, put my fingers to the keyboard and sluggishly type. Why don't my car's windows roll down? I press the enter key. You witness the dim screen fill with a list of bland titles such as My windows won't roll down, How to fix power windows, Car windows won't go up. We may have the answer. I slowly scroll down as my eyes gaze over the text. My cursor moves to hover over a YouTube video that could not look more disinteresting, and after a second's hesitation, I click it. The icon spins as the video loads. A thick southern accent greets me and states in a monotonous tone, Welcome to Eugene's Mechanics. Wow, it's not a southern accent, I'm just going to go with it though. Today I'm going to show you how to fix your car's window. I stare expressionlessly as the video elapses. The video finishes and I close my computer. Walking over to my shelf, I grasp my car keys and trudge outside. The noonday sun, the hot summer air engulf me, and I squint as I make my way to my car. As I open the door, a new wave of heat washes over me. I sigh and fall into the driver's seat. I turn the key halfway. My car's operating lights come on, and it beeps at me angrily, not for not wearing my seatbelt. I ignore it. I press the button for my window to roll down and hold it. Slowly, oh so slowly, it lowers. After it reaches the bottom, I hold the button for 3 more seconds and release. I press the button for my window to go up, and it creeps back to its original position. I hold the button for 3 more seconds and release. I turn my car off and then turn it back on and try the back windows. Nothing. I sigh again and stare blankly at my window control panel. I notice a switch with the word ON written on it in the white letters. I blink twice before reaching forward and flipping it. I press the back button for my windows and they slowly roll down. I lay my head on the steering wheel. You know, there are some days I genuinely believe I'm pretty darn smart. But you see, there are other days I firmly believe my windows are broken, spend a week treating them as such, and then, when I finally get my lazy self around to doing approximately an hour of research on how to fix them, discover that one of the 6 buttons on my driver's side door turns out to be the window lock button. A button which I just so happen to bump into the on position. Rubs hands down his face. See, it's when I do things like that that I'm not quite so disillusioned with my intelligence level. Especially in the light of the fact that there are 6 possible buttons on my driver's side door. I was consciously aware of the functions of 5 of them, but I didn't think, wonder if this switch, which is the one button which I don't know the function of, and has always been in the off position and is now in the on position, could have anything to do with my car windows not rolling down. Nope! It turns out that extremely basic logical thought escaped me. So yeah, that happened and made me feel really smart. But as I'm sure that story of me monotonously finding out how to roll down my car windows... But as I'm sure that story of me monotonously finding out how to roll down my car windows gripped you. And I think it's probably time to get into the substance of my life over the last month. To kick us off, after I finished my last live email, I video chatted with Matt and Alan for like 2 hours. If I remember correctly, we discussed if necessary and conditions... Okay. We discussed the necessary and sufficient conditions for friendship, acquaintanceship, and human relations. And yeah, you heard me right. We spent 2.5 hours trying to define words. Don't you really want to be a philosopher now? But despite it sounding quite boring, I found the conversation quite informative and worthwhile. After that, I worked on Memorized History of Philosophy some, and then went to Neo's to play a pretty darn good session of D&D. Bible study, on the other hand, was meh. I just wish I learned more stuff, you know. Oh well, it's still good to hang out with Neo and Co. The only other notable thing that happened that night was we did some VR. I think we all took turns on Beat Saber, and that was okay. Honestly, though, Beat Saber is a fun game, but not really meant for 2 people, and it doesn't really work best with taking turns. The next day, being Monday, I had no work, and it was paid time off, which my boss, never gives. So that was great. That day, I spent a large portion of my time working on my philosophy book, and also filing tax returns. Yeah, I know. Everyone talks about the death of filing your taxes. And to be honest, having never done it before, it never, and hearing the rumors, I was a bit nervous of what awaited me. But I did some research, and I found this site, H&R Block, and gosh, it was so helpful. It was a very well-designed site, and all the features I needed were free. So I just, walked me through step by step, and I did everything. So yeah, just saying, if any of you have to do your taxes but haven't done it, I highly recommend this site. Though I don't know if it works on New Zealand taxes. But anyway, I found this awesome site, and after spending a good 2 hours or 3 hours answering a host of questions, I got it done, and was given $650 back. So that's what? $200 an hour? Yeah, I would say that was a pretty well worth my time. Oh, and on a related note, it turns out that I had, that when I was employed, I had just maxed out my unemployment benefits, so I didn't end up missing out on any huge dividends of cash. So in hindsight, God was making things work out after all. So yeah, did all the tax stuff, and that was totally worth it. Then after that, I got done and spent the time beta reading for a friend. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm convinced that beta reading is like the essence of death, like just the concept, having to read someone's, ill-trained writing work and then lie to them most of the time saying you love it, or risk plunging their emotionally frail hearts in the depths of depression. That sounds like death. Thankfully, the person I'm beta reading for is better than that and actually writing pretty well, at least pretending not to be plunged into depression's sake when I write her a 50 negative comments in a row and one positive one. But still, I nevertheless was obliged to read a story that I wouldn't pick off the shelf otherwise. And oh my gosh, if I had $1 for every time someone in this story hugged someone else or cried, I could buy, well, I would only have like $200, so I could buy a really nice pair of headphones. The point is the characters are emotional to the point where I'm beginning to wonder if they've been infected with some sort of rare disease that makes crying like breathing. Something they need to do to survive. Anyway, the point is I trudged through that for her and got a sizable chunk read and commented on. I then proceeded to weed the yard for a bit and finally ended the day with playing some old board games that the family dug up from the basement. The next day I had work, which was a bit different as Nate was off because his wife is having a baby. So it was just me and Mom. But after that, I finished, and I got home, and I had the whole face-palming car window locking experience that was aforementioned. I still can't believe I didn't think to press the window unlock button. I then spent a sizable chunk of my day reading through my philosophy book, and later that afternoon went over to Katie's house where we watched the televised version of Wolfgang's Quantum Mechanics book, which I must say is much less informative and poorly made. We saw the same bit of animation, I kid you not, like at least 5 times. But yeah, we ended up that night playing some Mario Kart, which I consistently lost. Frowns. Moving on, the next day consisted of more work, and I received some new earbuds in the mail. Ben found a pair for like $25 that, even though they did not look so good, functioned really well, so I decided to get a pair for myself. I then read my book some more and did some more rollerblading. Here's some pictures I took from those various adventures. Picture. After rollerblading, I then finished the last of the existential philosophy comics, which, given there's like 300 of them, is a pretty sizable achievement, and also kind of sad, though. So, in honor of an era ending, I present you with one last philosophy comic, at least for now. So the moral of the story is, if you ever meet a radical skeptic, punch them in the face. Also, just because it fits so perfectly, I think I'm going to share my favorite philosophy quote of all time. Avicenna, a beast philosopher, and probably my favorite to be honest, once said, "Those who deny the first principle, aka the law of non-contradiction, should be flogged and burned until they admit it's not the same thing to be not flogged and not burned as to be flogged and burned." Seriously, I need to put that on a t-shirt or something. Anyway, I finished those comics, comics that Wednesday, and yeah, that's about all I did for that day. The next day, I had work. I know, a novel experience to report. And then I talked to Robbie, a person from Asher Christie, for like 3 hours about free will, because he wanted to know more about the subject. Then later that day, I played soccer and rediscovered that being a couch potato feels bad when you play athletic sports. So yeah, I just got home and crashed. The following morning, I rollerbladed down to the Human Being with Dad and Grace, which was meh. They brought Gizmo, who Grace was worried would hurt himself, so she was all upset. And the dad became vicariously upset. And so I pulled a responsible brother move and turned up the music in my earbuds. To be fair, they figured it all out, and there was not much I could have done other than that. So, I don't know, maybe I could have given like emotional support, but we all know how good I am at that. But yeah, everyone's moods got better once we got the smoothies, and we kind of just bladed back over and all had a good time. I spent some more time at Resistance Philosophy, and then I talked with Jordan for a bit, and then I went on a hike with Molly and co. And I hardly took any pictures, so not much to show. But we hiked somewhere starting at the YMCA, and that was an easy one, like 7 miles, no elevation gain. So a ton of people came. Seriously, I think there were like 30 people. So yeah, I started talking with Alex, but our conversation didn't consist of much substance. Then later on, Mrs. Miller introduced me to 2 girls, and we started a conversation, which ended up consisting of me rambling about the various philosophical topics for like 2 hours, which I personally loved, and I think, key word right there, they found informative. So yeah, we then proceeded to reach our destination, which was a cool lake covered in lilies. Here I have a picture of it. And after that, a different 2 girls wanted to talk about philosophy stuff, but they weren't super fit, so I joined them and went the short way back. I'm afraid when it comes to a choice between a longer hike or deep conversations, there's not much competition. But yeah, that was good, and I hope you learned something from that conversation as well. So I finished the hike, got home late, and went to bed. The next morning, Saturday I believe, I read some more of my philosophy book. I also decided that figuring out what the heck truth is probably a good idea, so I decided to read an SCP article, Stanford Encyclopedia article, on the subject. However, it turns out that finding out what a truth maker is way harder than it seems. So yeah, I read the whole article, but I'm not going to say I understood it all. But yeah, After I finished that, I went on a fun Ultimate Frisbee gathering Joe set up, and we played quite a few rounds, which was fun. Then, after all that was over, I went over to a smoothie place and got some Boss smoothies. Seriously, they were so good. And then we just sat around and talked. Abnormally, Ben actually joined me for this whole endeavor, but he got pretty darn bored as me and everyone else just sat around talking about theology and philosophy. So eventually, because I'm like 1% considerate, I called it for Ben's sake and drove us both home. We then spent the evening watching a movie with the fam, and I talked with Elkin and William into the night. Upon the morrow, I read some more of my philosophy book and worked on memorizing history of philosophy some more. I then went to D&D, which was good, and we all played some Smash Bros, which was also good, especially because I'm getting good at it. Then me and Neo had a good conversation over the dishes. The next morning, I read more philosophy, did an interview, and was given a Chem 101 override, which I'm actually super thankful for, because even though I tested out that class, I was going to have to test out again if it wasn't for this whole COVID thing, so they made exceptions. I then did work, was uncharacteristically unproductive, bladed some, prayed, and then read some more of my philosophy book. More work ensued the next day, and basically all I did until 7 that evening was read my book. You know how darn big and long this thing is? Like, seriously, like 650 pages. Maybe it's just me and my slow reading, but like every 10 pages takes me around an hour or so. So, I don't know. Anyway, at 7, I went to Rasher Christie again at Katie's house, and we played Smash Bros, and I was surprisingly destroyed, and card games. When I got home, I found my Aunt Amber, who lives in California, was just hanging out in the living room. So I joined in on a conversation and talked till 2 a.m. Apparently, she had flown over from California to see her parents and needed a place to stay for the night. Then me and Ben stayed up talking till about 3 a.m., which was an uncharacteristically good conversation. I wish he was willing to have more of those. After that, I kind of crashed. The next morning, I went to work as per usual. My Aunt Amber left, I got you. My Aunt Amber left, and my workday wasn't very productive as far as memorizing stuff goes. I then drove over to Braden's house to hang out, and we played Smash Bros. Until his parents forced his family to get ice cream with them, which, as far as being forced to do something goes, ice cream isn't a bad deal. So yeah, we got ice cream, and then we played some more until about 11. I barely lost the last game, which was unfortunate. And then I drove home and hit the sack. Understandably, considering my last 2 nights of sleep, or lack thereof, I slept until 11. I then went through the routine, work, memorized history of philosophy, reading my philosophy book, and so on. But that evening, I did get to play some soccer with Ben, which was good. I then got sucked into watching Tinkerbell, because my sister had it on. I know, pro move, right? And then rounded the night by reading my book some more. The next day, there wasn't a hike since the Millers were in New Mexico, so you'll never guess what I did. I read my book. I know, didn't see that coming, did you? I then watched a movie with my bro that need not be mentioned, because it was 100% trash and not worth my time. I then read more, and then that evening watched Blade Runner with Mom and did a pizza night. But in all honesty, Blade Runner was pretty trash as well, although it looked a lot cool in the trailer. That night, Jordan emailed me, asking me to be his intellectual mercenary, so hesitantly, I took the gig, and actually found what I believe to be a really plausible solution to the head covering debate. So this is actually super exciting. So if anyone wants to know what the solution is, feel free to email me about it. The only thing I did other than that is I sat on the front porch and with Ben trying to brainstorm about ideas about what we're going to do with the cousins, Toby and Sam, when they arrived in a few days. We came up with a list, but in hindsight, it was pretty useless as we only used one thing from it. We stayed up past 1 doing that, and it was good, though I did get slightly consumed by mosquitoes. Whatever day was next, I spent a lot of it reading. I also did a mini D&D session with Mom, and she seemed to find it mildly interesting. Oh, and also Mom, Ben, and I watched this movie called Source Code, which was actually pretty good. It's one of those Groundhog Day movies where the same period of time just repeats itself over and over and over again, and it was definitely worth the watch. The only other slightly noticeable things I did that day was I watched a few D&D themed videos and rollerbladed some. I read another chapter in my philosophy book the following day, and I decided I might as well try and start a family D&D thing, so I did Grace's session -1, and she loved it, but unfortunately, when I did the session with Dad, he thought it was boring, and Ben is so set that it's way too nerdy to even be worth trying, so he's not going to do it. So at the moment, it looks like Mom and Grace will be my only persons in my campaign, but that could still be fun. I also hung out with Braden that day, and we got slushies at Sonic. It is crazy how busy that place was. And played this game I've mentioned so many times I probably shouldn't even need to give its name anymore. So yeah, that was the day. Monday, I didn't have work, so I spent the day reading my philosophy book and doing a D&D session with Grace. Then late in the afternoon, Aunt Hillary, Annalise, Sam, Toby finally arrived. After doing nothing for a while, we all finally tried to work out what to do. It took us a literal hour, but we finally agreed on something, so everyone hopped in my car, and we drove to Smashburger. It was night at this point in time. So we ordered 2 large things of fries. I said smash burger, but I think I mean 5 guys. And we drove up to the reservoir as we had planned, but it turned out there was this huge storm on the way. So when we got to the spot we were going to eat said fries and look over the city, there was like lightning flashing every 5 seconds or less. So here we are stuffing our face with fries as this massive storm rolls in and then starts raining, and we find this rock to hide under so we can like stuff our faces in peace and watch the awesome lightning show. Then, upon finishing the majority of the fries, we decided it would be cool to just drive along the ridge in the storm, and that was just crazy powerful. One of the best kinds of storms. So we all hopped in my car, and I just started driving. So here I am, driving along the top of the ridge, while the super strong wind is causing me to swerve and stuff. And this lightning strikes right in front of us. Seriously, it had to be like less than a football field away. So at that point, we're both like, wow, awestruck face. And also like, wow, realizing lightning might actually strike my face. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And we drove a bit further, and then we pulled off to watch the lightning until one struck really close to us again. And we were like, yeah, time to go. So then I drove toward home, and it started hailing. So since I have a skylight in my car, I was like, cover the car with a tarp in my trunk. So we all burst from my car and struggled to secure the tarp over my car as we got pelted with hail and rain. And upon finally succeeding, we all rushed back into my car to wait it out. We didn't have to do much. We didn't have much to do while in there. Though I will say Ben and Sam did play Lego that I've stashed in my back. So, you Lego haters, it was a good idea. After the hail subsided, we shoved my tarp back in my trunk and made it back to town. We decided we should pick up some candy for the movie night, and we barely made it to Safeway before the store closed. Upon securing vast amounts of sugar, I finally drove us home, and then we consumed said sugar while watching the first Hunger Games movie late into the night. Overall, the night was pretty darn great, I've got to say. The next day, we made up this game where originally me and Toby had Nerf guns and transportation, aka I had rollerblades and he had a longboard, and we had to find and shoot Ben and Sam before an hour and a half elapsed. The only thing is they could hide anywhere on CSU's campus, which, if you didn't know, the campus is like a square mile, so there's so many hiding spots. However, they had to send us a picture once every 5 minutes, so we at least have some chance. However, soon Toby joined Ben and Sam, and it ended up being just me trying to find them, but that was all good. We played this game a lot, which I will now call the CSU game. And throughout the time they were there, I will tell you, it's a miracle I found them every time. Seriously, their pictures were so cryptic. Like, it was only because I spent so much time rollerblading around CSU that I was able to make any sense of them. Here's some examples of how cryptic pictures they were taking. So yeah, I attribute my success over the duration of their stay to the combination of luck and an unhealthy knowledge of obscure places on CSU. So yeah, we played that game and it was fun. Then we kind of just hung out some. After that, I took Sam to Ratio, Chrissy, because he found, which he at first found extremely boring because apparently we used too many quote-unquote big words. But after the talk about metaphysics died down, we played some games. I think he had a good time. Then that night, Sam and I took a tarp out to CSU's campus along with some pillows and blankets, and we just laid out under the stars and talked. Here's a poorly taken picture. I will say discussing deep things with Sam is not a linear experience. I have to work very hard to just keep us on a consistent topic. Nevertheless, it was a great topic and definitely worth it. The next day, we all woke up pretty late and we decided to drive and get bubble tea, which I thought would be cool since... Oh, and I thought it'd be a cool idea to show the cousins Twin Silo Park, since it's the coolest park in town. But then when we got there, I found it swamped with small children. And I suppose it's understandable, as I guess is a park for small children. So we went back home, played some more of the CSU game, and anyway, here's a few pictures so you can get a feel for the park's awesomeness factor. There are pictures. So yeah, it was pretty cool, as you can see. So while we waited for that night to fall, we played some more of the CSU game, and Sam squeezed his big feet into Grace's tiny rollerblades and joined my team to help catch Toby and Ben while in constant pain. And yeah, that was fun. We also tried to play Kill with the little foam ball for a bit, but after I destroyed everyone, we ended up just sitting on the bridge and staring at water. Here's some pictures of us. We then waited for night to fall, and upon having such a moment arriving, we once again found ourselves at Twin Silos Park. But this time, instead of it being infested by children, it was infested by big children, aka sketchy teenagers and young adults to be specific. So we just kind of hung out as we waited for them to leave and did a few challenges to pass the time, such as who could bounce back on the zipline the furthest, or who could spin the others the fastest, etc. Here's a picture of that park at night. Also, so after the sketchy people left, we ended up playing an extreme version of freeze tag where you couldn't touch the ground, but you could go over most of the park. And amazingly, and via much pain, Ben eventually beat us all. So we played there till 11:30. And then on the way home, we got Frosties from Wendy's. Then that night, we watched the second Hunger Games together. The following day, we all woke up at noon and spent a good chunk of time playing D&D with all the cousins except Ben. And I think there was an overall consensus that was fun. We proceeded from there to play more of the CSU game, where I still managed to find Ben, Toby, and Sam, even though they were in this super obscure spot. Actually, the place from which the picture with the dinosaur they drew was in. Oh, actually, the place from which the picture with the dinosaur they drew was in. But then Toby got tired of it, so Ben and Sam did one last round without him, and I think it was the best round of them all. They hid for a solid 45 minutes before actually giving me a clue that was 1% useful. But when I finally found them and started climbing up the stairs to the spot where they were, they booked it down the other flight of stairs. So I had to hobble down the stairs as fast as I could with my blades. And then when I reached the bottom, they already had a massive head start. So I raced after them, only to think I lost them after 10 minutes of searching. But then, just when I had given up, I spotted them as they emerged from a hiding spot a good distance away. And thinking I had a new lease on life, I bladed as fast as I could over where, I thought they were, only to have lost them for another 10 minutes. So just as I was about to give up, again, I noticed atop a concrete platform, there's this little wall with a little door in it. And lo and behold, they hid in there. So I ended up catching them, but seriously, it was such a good hiding place, and I almost didn't check it. So yeah, that having happened, we all went home and went on a quick detour to get some sauce stuff for Toby to make his special noodles. And then came back and ate said special noodles while watching the third Hunger Games movie. And that's how we spent the night. The next day, Toby had to go as he was flying out to live with his grandparents for a month. And so it was just me and Ben and Sam. We decided to go play laser tag, but to be honest, it was kind of meh at best. So we made our way home and picked up Five Guys fries, and then just kind of chilled until that night where we watched the last Hunger Games movie. And gosh, the end of that movie is just depressing. The first time I've watched the Hunger Games all the way through. We woke up late Friday and decided to play games together on the computers until the rest of them left. And here's a picture that my mom took of all of us. Look at us. After they left, I did a deep clean of my room and decided to print all the psychology, philosophy, and theology papers that I would still consider good that I've written and organize them accordingly. By the time I finished that, the Wades had dropped by for dinner. So Ben and Sam Wade went out and played one last round of the game, the CSU game. And, well, I guess it was 2 rounds because the first one I got them super fast. The second one, however, I didn't find them until literally 8 minutes from the time when they would win. Wait, actually, that's not true. I did find them one time before that, but they went down a stupidly long flight of stairs, and by the time I got to the bottom, I couldn't see them. They were gone. Anyway, with 8 minutes to go, I chased them around and missed them a few times with my Nerf guns, and then I kept almost getting them when they would go down or up an aforementioned flight of stairs. So here I am at the top of the dread stairs, and I see them beginning to sprint down. So in a last-ditch effort to get them, because I didn't, get them, if I didn't get them, I'd lose, I shot both my guns. I missed both. So here I am just thinking I'm done. And I trudged down the stairs to find my bullet. And I can't. So as I walked down the stairs, sure I'd lost, I suddenly saw Sam burst from a hiding spot right beside me and sprint back up the stairs. And dazed, I just kind of look around, only to find Ben still frozen in the spot Sam had just burst from. And I was like, okay. And I shot him. So I ended up winning because they literally had a 30-minute, when they literally had a minute and 30 seconds to go. So that was crazy. But the other time that night, but other than that night I caught up on emails and that I'd missed over the week and took some time to update my hard copies from my Google Docs. The following day I went to church, and for the first time in ever, and that was cool. I mean, we had to all wear masks for a considerable portion of it, but, it was good to be back on the surface and all. I then went on a walk with Dad across CSU, and we just talked. I then went over to Neo's for some D&D, which was great, as always. Then we had Bible study, where we had a discussion of what the Bible study should look like, and decided to change a few things, so that was good. After that, we played this phone VR hybrid game where 3 people were squirrels on their phones, and 1 person was a tree in VR. And the goal of the game was for the squirrels to get the tree's acorns before time runs out. And it was pretty fun. Then we played blackjack and poker till midnight, and me and Neo stayed up till 2 doing dishes and debating, which was pretty darn good. The next morning, I tried to make a list of all my philosophical, theological, and psychological questions, and gave up. It's a little bit of a daunting task. So I weeded the front yard instead, and then read some more of my philosophy book before deciding to amend some of my errors in my Aristotle Metaphysics paper. So I got that done, and then went to dinner with Joe, the guy who organizes Thursday night soccer I've been going to. The food was really good, and they were nice, but I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. It was just their house felt uncomfortably clean. Like if you just touch anything, you'll contaminate it. And besides that, philosophical conversations weren't happening, so that was a bummer. But yeah, I ate dinner there and then left a bit early because Joe James, Buff Joe from Southgate, had organized a thing that same evening, and I had accidentally double-booked myself. Another pro move on my part. So I rushed over there to find them doing, well, not much. But then Joe struck up this conversation about probability, and we argued about that. Because he thought probability was formulated in some weird way, which I'm not going to recount the whole scenario in which this played out. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? And basically that's how the conversation went for 30 minutes. But then me and Jake walked around, and I talked to him about the scientific realism, anti-realism debate, which was very intriguing. And then we played some groundies until Joe decided we needed to do a spontaneous arm wrestling match. And there was like a total of 6 of us. But then Jake, I see. But Jake was recording scores, so we didn't wrestle. In the end, I fought a total of 4 people, of which I was able to beat 3 of them with my right arm, including Caleb, which surprised me as much as him. And I think that what I realized for the first time is, as I faced him, the position of your wrist determines who's the victor. So I focused on getting my wrist in a good position first thing before we started, and that is what, got me the victory. But I lost to literally everyone with my left. Holds up a noodle with the left arm and pokes it. Also, I underestimated Joe's strength. Seriously, even with my right arm, I think I lasted like 3 seconds. It was like trying to hold back a bulldozer. But yeah, after that was over, my arms were very sore, and we all went over to Joe's house and played Smash Bros. Amazingly, I actually beat Joe pretty well. And I say amazingly because he plays a lot of video games, so I'll take that victory. So yeah, we played that until like 1, and his brother and Zach joined in for a good bit of that. The next day, I worked on memory system philosophy some more. I went to work, where the only notable thing that happened was I learned that Nate, my boss, is going to be leaving in a month. So that was sad and unfortunate. I then read my philosophy book some before playing my weekly game of D&D with Mom and Grace. I also ordered these really cool metal dice. Check them out. So yeah, I got those ordered, and I DM'd some for my family, and then Mom and Grace and I watched half of Avatar. And I've got to say, seeing it especially for the first time, it was a really well done movie. But I had to stop halfway because I had Ratchet Christie. So I drove down to Katie's house, and we talked politics and racial stuff for like an hour or so. Well, more like they talked politics and racial stuff. I didn't have much to say. And then I brought the conversation around to the subject of ethics, and we had a big conversation/debate about if it was ethical to play Mario Kart and just, live the lives we presently live. I wasn't very satisfied with what we came to as a conclusion, to be honest, and I'm kind of hoping we can talk about it more next time. The following day, I went to work, as per usual, caught up on Sela's books I'm beta reading for her, and then finished the Avatar with the fam. I then drove Grace and myself to youth group, which was at the Myers house, where we played a bunch of volleyball and had a few good conversations. I then came home to my family watching this show called Alone, where people are trying to survive in the woods for the longest time, and I joined them, and then went to bed. The following morning, I had work once again. I memorized some more history of philosophy stuff before reading my philosophy book for 4 hours. I then picked up Benj, and we went to play Thursday Night Soccer, which was probably one of the best of them so far, I've got to say. Not only because it was drizzling, and I personally think that's perfectly weather for soccer, but Benj convinced everyone to play with no shoes on, so the experience was like bringing out my inner Kiwi. But yeah, it was a great time, and I did abnormally well that day, so I'm sure that helped. When I got home, I was pretty majorly tired, and because I played really hard, and so I kind of just flopped on the ground. Oh, and Grandpa was over, so I happened to. Upon the morrow, I got up at 6 a.m. for my hike. I drove up with Cable, Molly, and Chris, and a new person named Natalie, to a place past Estes Park. We hiked the Meadow and St. Vrain peaks, but all I know is it was wet, and I was already sore from soccer. So the hike was like 8 miles all told, but overall, it was like half a mile elevation gain. Here's us starting out. Oh yeah, I remember that hike. So yeah, the guy with the bucket on his head, that's Cable. Also, he wore it the entire time, and hey, if any of you care to know. We then hiked up the mountain, and here's a picture of that. Earlier on the trip up, Molly hit me with a book. Oh, yeah, I got you. Earlier on the trip up, Molly hit me with a book when I started talking about philosophy. Apparently, she thinks I talk about it too much. And so for the start of the hike, I didn't talk too much. But eventually, she said she would find it acceptable for me to talk about philosophy until we made to the tree line. So I decided to recount the history of philosophy for the next hour. And if I'd had any social awareness, I would have noticed that 3 of my 4 listeners were completely disinterested, as I later discovered. But no, Cable told me to keep going, so I did. And yeah, I got about a third, maybe halfway through the content memorized by the time we reached the tree line. Here's a picture of that, by the way. So we all sat down to eat, and there was this point where the world got much, much colder. In fact, it even snowed some. And all I had was a thin sweatshirt and a rain jacket, so that was great. I ended up borrowing a hat from Cable, as well as some wool socks as pseudo mittens. We then hiked all the way up to the snow, to the summit, which I will say was quite an arduous climb, but we made it. Here's a picture of that. And after hanging out at the top for a bit, we then made our way back down, during which Molly told me to stop being so intellectual, a message I get a lot from feelers, I must say. And yeah, that was an interesting conversation. But you should all be proud of me, because I actually used some emotional intelligence. You look shocked. Alex, I didn't even know you had any of that. And instead of arguing with her and like beating her up against her anti-intellectual argument, I intellectually listened and did not debate her. I know. Look at me being all emotional intelligent. Anyway, I made it back down from the peak after walking through a bunch of snowfields. My feet were thoroughly soaked at this point, and we ate again before heading down. Oh, and it was at this point that Cable inquired what the heck the girls mean by the word, see, I'm not convinced it deserves that status, cute. I was actually hoping Molly and Natalie would shed some light on the meaning of the quote-unquote word, but the conversation, as it went on, basically forced me to conclude that cute to a girl means whatever the heck she wants it to mean. So yeah, we began our walk down, and it started hailing and eventually raining on us. So of course that part wasn't super enjoyable. But I've got to say, as the weather rolled in, it was just so cool. Like you could hear the thunder just kind of rumbling in the distance ominously, and we were like, yeah, we should probably head down now. So we began our descent, and then like 5 minutes later, this fog just rolls in. Like you can visibly see the edge of the fog as it creeps over the mountaintop, and it was just so cool. And it kind of looked like the fog from Hunger Games. So yeah, the fog moves in, and there's literally this wall of hail that overtakes us. Also so cool. But like, yeah, we moved in and out of the hail like every 10 steps. It was just awesome weather. So yeah, we kind of huddled in the trees for a bit, and we waited for the hail to subside, and we hiked down, and here's a picture of that. As we hiked down, Molly and Cable struck up a variety of conversations, mostly about relationships, which I didn't join in much. And we all drove down to Estes Park and got some chai tea at a place Molly knew, which was pretty good. We then visited this cool shop filled with swords and knives. Some of the swords looked so cool. And then we drove back. Overall, I would say it was a pretty darn good hike, and I enjoyed it pretty thoroughly, even though, I was kind of like, man, I'm just ready to sleep by the end. So yesterday, I spent the majority of the day working on this email, and then our old friend the Hamiltons stopped by, and we kind of just hung out with them for a while. And it had been so long since we last seen them. It was a really weird experience, but a cool experience. Here's the pictures of the time we'd last seen them, and then the time we were there from yesterday. Oh yeah, that's trippy. Perhaps the really disconcerting thing, though, is I still have the shirt that I'm in the first picture, like the same shirt. So yeah, we had them over, and oh gosh, I forgot to recount one thing that happened. So I brought out Shadowstone to show Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton because Mom asked me to, and Mr. Hamilton was like, so, does the novel have any philosophy in it? And I responded, well, it doesn't have any philosophy, but it does have some, some philosophy, because I was still Christian then. So then I said that sentence, right? And there was this thick, tangible silence that filled the air for a solid 4 seconds as everyone stared at me. At this point, I was just so confused, and I was looking around and being like, what did I say? Until Mom managed to utter, you're still a Christian? And it was only at that point in time that I realized I'd accidentally insinuated with that sentence. So that was immensely awkward until I cleared everything up. But hey, now I know the reaction I'd get if I ever became an atheist. So yeah, we had them over for a while, and they left. And then I worked some more on this live email. And then I joined the Tale of the Alone series with the family and bladed around the night a bit and listened to some of my songs with my beast of a playlist. There are now 780 songs on it. And then I went to bed. I woke up and finished this bad boy, and here we are. Hopefully, there was at least something in this email that entertained you. And as always, I'd love to talk to you and hear what's going on in your realm of the New Zeal. Thanks for reading, and I'll talk to you all later.